Good morning. Here we are. Oh, good morning. I've found you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on a cold Wednesday morning. Great to have you here. I don't get to see your faces on these webinars, so I love it if you talk to me in the chat. Otherwise, I feel like I'm talking to myself. So give me a hello, where you're from, and also what brings you. I like to know, are you a smart facilitator? Are you a smart group attendee? Are you other? What are you? Just give me a flavor of who I'm talking with this morning. Having trouble hearing me? Oh, can you hear me? Ben, I see your message. You're having trouble hearing me. Anyone else having trouble hearing me? Or let me know if you can hear me okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Sorry, Ben, it looks like it's you. My staunch tech advice is to log off and log off again. Log off and log on again. Plug everything in, try the on off. Sorry, Ben. Jennifer, great to have you here. Clinical nurse specialist. Excellent. We'll get a little from you then, Jennifer. Kate, thanks. Jennifer, thanks. Tanya, welcome. Excellent. So, AOD clinician, great. Liz Moore, hi from Perth. Counsellor, great to have you here, Louise. Hi, Tim, Nelson's Bay, lovely. Facilitator, fantastic. Update Zoom, says Suzanne. To you, I think, Ben. Sharon, AOD nurse from Northern Victoria, welcome. Hi, Sally. Great to have you here. Hi, Vicky. Social worker, smart facilitator, fantastic. Social worker facilitator in Brisbane, fantastic. Deb, working in men's refuge, new to us, welcome. Welcome, Deb. Hi, Megan. Youth, drug and alcohol in Orange. Welcome, Megan. Hello, Lindsay. Welcome. Perth. Hi, Dave in Newcastle. I'm close to you-ish. Hi, Kristin, peer support worker. Great. Fantastic. Where are you, Kristin? Hi, Suzanne. Whoa, that's exceptional. I'm so happy we have the US represented. Welcome, Suzanne. Oh, and Karen, welcome from California. Oh, is it hot there? Fantastic. Welcome, Karen. Hi, Helen, RN, and Smart. Family and friends. Participant, fantastic. Family and friends, yes. Hi, Han from Shepparton, fantastic, welcome. Hey, Lachlan in Sydney, great. Yeah, some family and friend participants here. Welcome all. If you've joined us while we're chatting away, just let me know where you're from and are you a smart facilitator? Are you a participant in our smart group meetings or other? Hi, Anne. Great, New South Wales, Tim Wilson Compulsory Drug Treatment Program. Making a showing from the US. Hooray, US friends and family. Thanks, Suzanne. Family and friends, national meeting helper from Kansas. How exciting this is. What time is it there for you guys? Hi, Tanya, welcome. Excellent. 7:30 p.m. Oh, well, I hope you're settled in. Thank you so much for joining us on a Tuesday evening. Welcome everybody. So just welcoming you all. I think, do we have Emily here? Are you here, Em? Can you give me a little dot in the chat if you're here, Em? Hi everyone, Ben from South Australia. Fantastic. Well, we've got Australia well covered, and we've got America. This is great. Yes, she is here. Wonderful. So I am Sally from Smart Recovery, Australia. I've met some of you. Hello, good to see you again. Some of you I haven't met, so hello. I'm looking forward to getting to know you. And we are joined by the wonderful Emily, who is also from Smart Recovery Australia and joins me today. So very happy to have Em here. Today is a big topic, as you guys know. If you came to our last webinar, I tried to keep it simple, digestible, little chunks, and we had a lot of time for questions and chat throughout. Today, I feel like I've got more information, and I want to get through it all and let you guys, especially in America, go to sleep at some stage. So I'm going to ask you to keep hold of your questions and comments until I kind of pause. And of course, I will pause many times throughout, and we'll have a little catch up of the chat and the questions. And I'm going to try and keep it, of course, interactive, so it's interesting for you. And I want to learn from you too. We all, it's Smart Recovery, of course. We completely understand that we learn from one another. We're a community here. I'm going to give you some info, and hopefully you'll give us some info, and together we grow and evolve and learn. So welcome to today's webinar. We are going to talk about trauma and addiction. And of course, I think reading the bios, the little bios of you and who you all are across this. We all know that extremely unfortunately, it is a fact that trauma and substance use are interrelated, highly correlated. Pia Melody, a respected authority in the fields of addiction and childhood trauma, talked about realizing that all of the people that came to her seeking help for substance abuse had trauma in their background. So here are some other statistics. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Here are some other statistics. Where are they? Here they are. So look at this. I mean, I created this graph from, a paper. There's many statistics, as you all are well versed in, but just this shows us, doesn't it? This is diagnosed substance use disorders in Australia. In Australia, National Survey of Australia in 2006. And the dark blue are the rates of people with specific substance use disorders that do not have trauma in their background. And the light blue are, Em raised her hand. Can you see the screen okay, guys? Hang on a minute. You've raised your hands, Em. I'm not sure why, so I'm going to carry on. Yep, you can see. Excellent. Okay. So the light blue is the amount of diagnosed substance use disorders with people with trauma backgrounds. So a huge difference, right? Here's some other statistics. 2007 Australian National Survey of Mental Health and Wellbeing, a third of adults with childhood trauma developed a alcohol or other use disorder. A third. That is 3 times that of adults who've never experienced trauma, and it's also considerably, significantly higher than people who experience trauma in adulthood. So it's a well-established fact, isn't it, that there is a lot of background trauma with the people that we see in our line of work. So wherever you are, whether you're a smart facilitator or not, if you're interested in this, we all see people with a high rate in our population that we see of trauma in their background. So I think it's useful to spend some time talking about it, even though we might have had a heap of other things. We might be extremely well versed in this area already, in which case we can learn a lot from you too. So in typical smart fashion, please don't hold back on sharing with your peers. Just share with us. We can learn a lot from one another. So acknowledging we have all of these experts in the room today, we have a variety of people, we have participants, we have facilitators, we have counselors, we have other clinical workers. So I'm going to try and make this as useful and accessible for us all, and please feel free to pitch in. Now, Em, do you want to say something? Because I can see that your hand's up, but I'm not entirely sure how to come to you. Can you type in the chat? That might be easier. Em, if you need me, type right to me in the chat. Because so before we look into trauma, we're going to start with a look at the nervous system. We're going to remind ourselves of how we work. So of course we have this amazing brain, body and nervous system connecting the two. And the autonomic nervous system, the ANS, is responsible for keeping us alive. It regulates things like our heart rate, our breathing rate, our blood sugar level, a myriad of processes that are constantly happening below our level of awareness to keep us alive. And it also keeps us safe, doesn't it? So when faced with a threat, the autonomic nervous system jumps into action and prepares us to respond to the threat. And there's a few responses, aren't there, which we're all familiar with, I'm sure. What are they? Type in the chat. What? Oh, great, because it keeps popping up, so it's a little bit distracting. I'm not sure how to come to you. So no problem. I will cease trying to assist you. Fight, flight, or freeze. Absolutely. So the fight or flight response, it's known as. Freeze. There's some others as well. Fawn, absolutely. And there's one more on the way to sort of freeze. Anyone know what that one is? Which is it's flop. We call it flop. So we have fight, flight, flop, which is on the way to a freeze. I put this up. And then we have a fawn. So which one is this? Fight. Absolutely. And we all know that. I like this picture because we can see people leaning in, stepping forward, hands are raised, throat and jaw are jutted forward, ready to go in to the fight, right? The opposite of fight, well, the other side of the coin, as we'll unpack, is this one, isn't it? What's this one? Run, absolutely, flight, get out of here. And I like this picture because we're fully traveling away. Everything within our body is taking us away, but we've got our eye on the danger because it's coming after us. Absolutely. This one, what's this one? The little girl. What's the little girl? Top left. Freeze. Yeah. And look at this, typical wide eyes, the deer in the headlights, stiffening. We stiffen in this, don't we? We can't focus in this state. And we've got a flop down here. So the flop is all the going inwards, and it's basically the giving up. So I can't fight, I can't run away, so I'm giving up. And the flop is preparing us for a feigned death response, basically. So it's a kind of way of conserving energy. We actually release an analgesia that sends endorphins through our body that feels good to prepare us for the pain of death. So, you know, there's issues here around becoming accustomed to this response of the nervous system, because it can feel good. It can feel kind of dreamy. And it's obviously associated with dissociation. Like playing dead. Absolutely, Terry. Yeah, absolutely. And then over here, I thought this was a good representation of trying to make friends with the predator, with the threat. So this is the Stockholm syndrome. This is the typical kidnapping scenario of I'm trapped, I'm scared for my life, I can't fight, I can't flight, I haven't gone into the death response, the flop. And so my best response is to try and make friends, to try and engage socially so that they don't want to hurt me. So here's my question for you, my first question. Which one do you tend to do? Because I think we all have a tendency towards one, don't we? So freeze and flop. So you're likely to freeze either instantaneously or for a while before you flop. You can't sustain the freeze. So somebody might freeze, realize that they can't fight or run away, and then collapse. So we've got some fawns, we've got some flops. What's your response? What's your go-to response? We've got some flights. Yeah. What else? What do you tend to do? It's good to have a think about this. Think about when you feel your stress rising, when you know that you're in a situation and you're feeling heightened emotions. What's your tend to go to response? Flight, fight. That's interesting. Depends. So it can change. Yeah. Flop. So we've got all represented here. And that's kind of what we would expect, right? So it's an important point that we don't have the same stress response. And there's lots of fascinating research onto the kind of personality traits that develop as a response to having this response to trauma, specifically early on in childhood, how we've managed to adapt to survive and how that then plays out in adult life. So the stress response, of course, is a great mechanism. It's an adaptive mechanism that's evolved to keep us safe, keep us alive. So a gazelle is grazing, relaxed, digesting, being social. The lion, she sees a streak of orange and the lion's there. And before she has time to consciously register, her autonomic nervous system, her ANS is kicked in and she is running. So blood is getting sent to her extremities, her heart rate's heightened so she can run faster and she can get more oxygen in. She's narrowed her focus right down to where she can go and what's chasing her. She's not aware of things going around other than getting to safety and the predator behind her. She's engaged fully in fleeing. She's running for her life. The time before she's had time to consciously think, this all happens milliseconds before we consciously are aware. So let's say in this scenario, she outruns the lion. Then the autonomic nervous system, fight or flight, stress, survival response switches off. She returns to being able to digest, communicate, connect, relax, have her bodily functions back online after about 20 minutes. So it's a fantastic system designed to keep us safe, to keep us alive, but it's designed to be a short-term response to an immediate threat, to switch on, get us out of harm's way, and then to switch off. And of course, the problems come when this mechanism is stuck on for an extended amount of time. It's not designed to be on for an extended amount of time. So that's going to lead to chronic stress, and that we know leads to health problems. Or it switches on inappropriately or too frequently when there's not actually a real threat to our physical safety. And if you have that maladaptive nervous system that's switching on when it doesn't need to, when you're not in physical danger, that's going to interrupt how you can function in your day-to-day life, right? So let's talk a bit about polyvagal theory. I'm sure, again, that you know a lot about this. So this was introduced, this concept, by Stephen Porges, 2011, but the polyvagal theory. But the vagus nerve is the primary component of the autonomic nervous system, and it connects all of the information that comes in through neuroception from all our senses with all the organs that are part of our response. And polyvagal theory explains the relationship between the ANS and social behavior, and how our bodily experience, emotions, thoughts, perceptions, and behaviors differ depending on whether we're feeling safe or in danger. So it proposes 3 vagal-mediated adaptive responses for different circumstances. And they are safety, state of feeling safe, danger, and extreme threat to life. So 3 different responses that are initiated by our perception of what is going on in the environment. So the first of these circuits is the ventral vagal complex. So this is the green. It's also known as the smart vagus. And this down regulates the sympathetic fight or flight response we just talked about. So when we're not on, as in ON, capital ON, when the fight or flight response or sympathetic nervous system isn't activated, we can be relaxed, like the deer, social, engaging, bonding, and emotionally self-regulate. We're working well and we can connect with others. This part of our nervous system is implicated in social communication because it has an effect on the muscles of the face, and it's self-soothing, calming through its inhibition of the defensive limbic system. So that amygdala fight or flight response also controls heart rate. The second circuit is the dorsal vagal complex. So we have the ventral front and the dorsal the back. So this is an unmyelinated circuit. So it's not insulated, that's found in most vertebrates and is associated with very primitive survival strategies. So those very things needed to keep us alive underneath our conscious awareness usually. And this is the branch of the vagus nerve that engages defensive fight or flight behavior in the threat, in circumstances of threat. So this is the yellow or the orange here. And the third vagal mechanism acts through, again, the dorsal vagal complex, which in the face of an extreme threat to life will feign death. So this is where that feigned death comes in by producing slowing of the heart rate. So it slows the heart rate right down so much that we can just collapse or basically appear dead. Everything shuts down. So manifesting, of course, in a freeze, a faint, a flop, and this is, of course, the red zone. So there's a nice analogy. That was kind of a lot of blurb, but there's a nice analogy with water, which might help to make this super simple. So water, as we know, can either be in a state of liquid or steam or ice, right? So in the liquid form, we're fluid, flexible, open to connection. And in our analogy, this represents our connection system. It's the platform where we feel safe enough in our bodies to be open to others and to connection. So that's the green state. When we don't feel safe, we enter the state of defense. There's a threat. And in our analogy, steam represents the fight or flight system. So that's going to be the yellow, the orange. Can't decide if it's yellow or orange. High energy defenses evoke to respond to a threat. So you know that when you're in that state, you feel heightened, you have more energy in your body, and steam requires more energy, doesn't it? So steam has more energy, particles moving at a faster rate, and steam shows up as this fight energy or flight energy, two sides of the same coin. If steam doesn't get us safe, if we can't fight or flee, we can't perceive that we can, then ice immobilizes us. So this is the red. It's a physiological action as a metabolic drop and shutdown. And if it comes on strongly, it evokes the release of those endogenous opiates that I was talking about, numbing us basically to death. So ice is the threat response of the last resort. So that's interesting for those of you who identify with that response. You know, it's interesting to ponder how you got there, perhaps. Whereas the emotional continuum of steam is anger and fear, that kind of heightened. I on the emotional kind of scale is akin to more depression type emotions. So it's that withdrawal, it's that giving up, it's that collapse. Correlates with dissociation, as I said earlier. So as with the transformations of water, what trigger states changes are experiences of an intensity so great or continual that they push us across a threshold. So it's kind of a cumulative or extreme. So the initiation of any one of these vagal responses, these three, is based on our perception of threat. So if there's no perception of threat, then where are we going to hang out? We're going to be in the green. We're in ventral vagal. We're in safety. We're feeling safe. If there's no threat, we're feeling safe. So we're social, we're relaxed, all is well. But this is critical, isn't it? Our vagal responses are based on our perception of threat. So this is a subconscious neural process that distinguishes whether situations or people, anything in the world, are safe, dangerous, or life-threatening. And we all have different perceptions, don't we? And we all have different perceptions about what is and what is not threatening based on our earlier experiences. Just assuming you're all here, can talk immediately back to me. We all, based on our life experiences, our perception of what is threatening and what is not in our external environment is different, isn't it? So let's talk about trauma now. And we have to start with defining trauma. So even if you're very well versed in trauma, let's still have a look at this. So the APA, trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event. Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, trauma is an experience of extreme stress or shock that is or was at some point part of life. From SAMHSA, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, from an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual well-being. Dr. Peter Levine gives us a simple one: anything that overwhelms our ability to cope. So you can see there's no absolute definition of psychological trauma, which is what we're talking about here. But what we can also see is that the important fact about trauma is that it's not an event that happens to us. There aren't traumatic events. There's an event, and then it's our reaction to that event that manifests in a traumatic experience. So it's an internal experience following an event. So trauma is subjective, isn't it? We can all have the same experience and react, respond, perceive it slightly differently. So we could even get more specific and say that trauma is to do with unresolved ANS responses. So our nervous system helps us to elicit a response to an event or situation or threat. And we could say, therefore, that an event can either be processed through effectively, efficiently, in a healthy way, dealt with, stimulus, response, end, processed, or not processed, stuck somehow in that system. Stimulus, response, 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 response. The response is stuck on. So unprocessed events and experiences, therefore, are in a way ever present, aren't they? If they haven't been processed through. And we see this with our clients, don't we? So somebody who has experienced trauma, unfortunately, is more likely to experience a heightened trauma response to a subsequent traumatic event than someone who hasn't experienced prior trauma. So our nervous system is primed now to experience more stress if we've activated that system in a way that has been extreme or continual. So this is particularly the case for developmental trauma. So there are different types of trauma. And they include these. Again, you probably know this, but let's cover them off. So we've got single event trauma. We've got cumulative trauma. We've got complex relational trauma, intergenerational, transgenerational trauma, vicarious trauma. Kind of all of us that work in this field at sometimes, all of us that are living now a little bit vicarious trauma, so it's secondary trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder, developmental, including pre and perinatal. So obviously the parasympathetic nervous system is growing in vitro, and those first 2 months, 3 months of an infant's life are so important, because the parasympathetic nervous system, PNS, is being laid down, it's being developed. So if there's a trauma then, that's why the effects are so long reaching sometimes. So trauma in childhood is particularly tricky. But any trauma in childhood, of course, can be, can have detrimental and long lasting effects, as we all see. So in an instance of trauma, when the event hasn't been fully processed, the nervous system is kind of stuck on this high alert, and the ANS is in a constant state of lookout, of being alert for danger. And this makes perfect sense, right? We don't want to experience anything like that again. So we've survived an episode of trauma, and now we're going to make sure we are on constant vigil, because the world isn't safe. So we're going to look out for the slightest sign of danger. And if, of course, this is on a level below our conscious awareness, it's subconscious. So if the nervous system, the automatic nervous system, picks up on a slightest sign of danger that could be a potential concern, it's going to trigger the fight or flight response. It's going to trigger that stress response. So for an individual that's had many experiences or one extreme or experience of trauma, nothing or very little in the world can seem safe. That's their reality. That's their perception of the world. It's not a safe place. Even those people who should be there for us aren't. It's a very, very sad thing. And the default response is characterized by more frequent engagement of the dorsal vagal complex than is necessary to ensure actual safety. So the optimal state, well, I'll give you I've just made a note here of a little reference, which I find interesting. Lower heart rate variability has been observed in individuals. So there's research around this, there's a lot of research around this, with post-traumatic stress disorder and borderline personality disorder, which means that these people are in the stress response more of the time. Also, low heart rate variability is correlated with worse health outcomes. So they're more prone to be in that fight or flight response, and they're more prone to engage socially. And they're not as healthy. The longevity is less. So the optimal state for us to function in, of course, is this green state, this ventral, put this back on, this ventral vagal state, this water state. In this state, we function as a whole. The brain is connected, not separated, segmented, talks to the other parts of itself. We're connected to our whole, ourselves, and we're also in a state where we can connect to others. And we all here know that this is so important. Humans, we need connection to thrive. We know this. There's heaps of evidence around this. You all know this. So let's think about this for a moment. We need connection, and we're wired for connection. If we've experienced trauma, we're more likely to perceive danger, but we crave connection. How is this going to play out? I'm handing it over to you. Talk to me in the chat. How is this going to play out? We're wired for connection, but our nervous system is on, telling us that there's danger. How is this going to play out in the people that we see when we have a nervous system that's on? Let's start a discussion over text. Isolation, yeah. So hiding from the world, suspicion, staying away from people. What else? How else is it going to play out? We can perceive others' actions as threatening when maybe that's not intended. Absolutely. And what's the result of that? What's the consequence of that on our relationships? Difficult to trust people, paranoia, insecure attachment. Yes, Louise. I'm going to do a webinar on that next time to unpack that more. Difficulty understanding what's happening in the moment. Yes, because when that stress response is on, we are not connected to the part of our brain that has the resources in, that helps us to critically think and rationally think. We're not connected. So absolutely, difficulty understanding. Suicidal thoughts. Yeah, this is a terrible place. Self-harm. Yeah. Disorganized attachment. Yes. Attachment again. Sense of hopelessness. Yes. So now, what are you likely to do? What are we likely to do? If we're wired for connection, we have an innate drive to connect, but we can't connect because of all of these things that you've just said. What helps? We're going to look for something that helps us to be able to get out there and connect, aren't we? And what are those things? What helps you? Seek a substance to change how you feel. Seek a substance to change your nervous system response. Yeah, substance. Gaming, absolutely. Any external regulation tool. There we go. Any external regulation tool. If we are dysregulated, we need to regulate. We have this innate, below the level of awareness drive to get ourselves in the green zone. Now, if we have a dysregulated nervous system that keeps on putting us in the orange and potentially the red zone, all we want to do is get back to the green, And so we are going to look for, consciously, subconsciously, both things to help us get in the green if we can't regulate our nervous systems. So anxiety is a huge driver too, isn't it? I have to connect. I don't want to. I'm scared to. If I take X, Y, Z, I can. Yeah. So you probably come across this window of tolerance idea. The window of tolerance is the intensity of feeling that we can experience while still maintaining connection with another. And this window of tolerance is larger when we feel safe. So if we don't feel safe, a lot of the time, our window of tolerance is small. So this window is our green state. So imagine having a very small tolerance to stay in the green. We're in the green, everything's fine. We feel good, we feel grounded, we can connect, we feel calm, we feel good. But then when that window of tolerance is exceeded throughout the day, we're more likely to bring in anything to stay in that window, to stay in that green. So same concept explained in a slightly different way so that we really get this. If we've got a window, we all have this window of tolerance. If we've got a reduced window of tolerance and we have an innate desire, push, drive to stay in the green, in the window of tolerance, we're more likely to bring in things to keep us there. So it makes sense. We start to see how our behaviors, whether it is alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, screen use, whatever it is, how they can be a tool to help us to maintain the equilibrium, the regulation of our nervous system to get us back in the green zone. So when we think of substance use in this context, it's perfectly understandable, isn't it? The substances, the behaviors are a management tool. they're tools used to manage the dysregulation in the nervous system. And this is so important, isn't it? Because we have to bear in mind that stopping using the substances, stopping the behavior is one thing. Dealing with this underlying issue is another. If we are using substances or behaviors to help us to function in the world, build connections, maintain relationships, keep down a job, function, go about our lives, often a terrifying, scary world. We keep our nervous systems firing so that we can operate, keep us in the green. And then we suddenly don't have our tool that was our coping strategy. It's been taken away because we've got clean. We've managed to change our behavior. Woohoo! But we haven't dealt with this underlying issue. And this is the very reason we see so much relapse. So we have to manage this underlying issue, this dysregulated nervous system. And the good news is that, of course, we can retrain the nervous system, like everything else. It takes the 3 Ps. We use the 3 Ps in SMART. Anyone want to tell me what they are? Practice, patience, and perseverance. So if you are new to this topic, this is a takeaway. This is a takeaway to let your clients know you can retrain the nervous system. It just is going to take practice and patience and perseverance. And of course, there's a lot of help out there to do just that. So we are not going to fix a dysregulated nervous system in this webinar, but I would love to leave you and to start at least a discussion around practical tools to take away, either for yourself to use or to have in your arsenal of tools to help your clients or participants. So in good, smart fashion, I'm going to open up to you first. So my question to you is, what strategies have you used that have been effective for you to self-soothe, to calm your nervous system when it is triggered? What kind of things have you used? Meditation, time in nature, mindfulness. Love these. I do all these too. Belly rub. Great, Peter. Yoga to connect to body. Yes, so that somatic connection, so important. High intensity exercise. Yes, so much evidence around that. Classical music. Yes, there's evidence around that too. Mindfully walking. Absolutely. Believe it or not, Lego. Yeah, why not? Yeah, and there's a reason for that. You're focusing on one task. You're honing in. You're distracting, and you're also activating the creative part of your mind, which takes you out of the stress response. Prayer and meditation. Yeah. What else? Well, here's some I came up with. Did you a little brain cloud? Let's have a look. You've got all of them on here. There's a few more on here. Simple grounding exercises. Yes, but what, Trisha? What works for you? Works precisely. So we can ground our feet into the ground, push them in. We can get outside and walk in the earth. What do you do, Trisha? Hug a tree. So what have we got in my cloud that we haven't mentioned? Add weight. So this is an interesting one. Weight, whatever that is. So, there's a lot of talk around weighted blankets right now, isn't there? Weighted things, putting weight on you. But what weight does is it provides the brain with a proprioceptive input, which can produce organizing. It changes up the nervous system. So weight training works as well, because you're adding weight to your body. Carrying your children on your back works too. Any adding weight, and you can go to the fridge and get liters of milk, get cans, lift weights. It's a straightforward way to get that proprioceptive input and change up your brain. I've got here shake. Does anyone shake? anyone heard about this? Well, you might have seen animals. If you've got a dog or even a cat, or you've watched nature documentaries, after an experience, if you've got a dog, if there's an encounter with another dog, or they're suddenly shocked, you know, or they bang. I've seen my dog do this when she's just walked. Not funny, but when she's run into something and kind of hurt herself, and then she recovers, and then she shakes. So when it's thought that animals doing this, I always also have as those wild guinea pigs, the boys do this. So they have a fight, and then they separate, and then they kind of shake, and they make this noise, and it's a release. It's a release of the endorphins. It's a release of that energy that's come in from the stress response being on. You know, it's flooding, and it's releasing down. I remember I had a near bad car accident. I was absolutely fine, but it could have been awful. And after I stopped the car, I just shook. Haven't had that experience many times in my life, but I shook uncontrollably. And because I looked at this stuff, I knew what was happening. So I kind of just observed the nervous system process all of that energy that had just come in to help me get out of that life or death situation right there. So it's processed right through my nervous system, and I was fine, not traumatized, didn't have any problem getting back in my car, fine, because it processed through. So difficult experiences, including trauma, can create energy in the nervous system, and we as humans tend to not naturally shake it out. Could do a lot of research in this. I suspect there's a lot of societal values and what's approved and what isn't, and pull yourself together and don't shake and don't cry and stand up straight and all of that. But we don't have the tendency to shake like other species. But there's evidence to show that you can induce shaking, and it helps. So you can just shake like your dog, and that helps. So that's why that's on here. I've put eat on here. This is a bit of a controversial one because it might not be the healthiest one, depending on your circumstances though. But ingesting food, carbohydrates in particular, turn off the stress response. It's actually a really good way. If you can digest, you're sending your body signals that you're okay. You're not digesting when you're running from a predator. That's switched off. So if you eat carbohydrates, sends a signal to the brain that counters the stress response, and switches on the parasympathetic response. And so that's carbs. Fats also are super good for the brain and the nervous system. So healthy fats, obviously, but evidence suggests that eating fat helps the myelination of the nerve. So you're literally cushioning your nervous system when you eat fats. So it's kind of like a good preventative too. So think of that. All those lovely Mediterranean diet things, good for you. Relaxed lifestyle, lots of olives and avocados and things. So all of these strategies can help recalibrate your nervous system. But what's also really important to have that we don't tend to talk about as much are tools that we can use right then and there when we need them in the moment. So here are some good ones, some of my favorite ones right here. So bilateral stimulation, you've actually mentioned on the chat some tools that are bilateral stimulation. But basically, when we can stimulate both sides, bilateral of the brain, we're redirecting the intense energy. So when we're in the stress response, when sympathetic is turned on, when we're in fight or flight, we have that excess of energy and brainwave frequencies. Our brainwave frequencies are heightened. All of our mental resources are going towards that area of the brain that's happening in, the limbic area, the amygdala area, to keep us alive and safe. So if we can create some balance in the brain and take the energy into the whole brain, it really helps. So this is really simple to do, and let me show you here. So you can take anything. So look around you and see, yes, Karen, yes. Look around you and pick up anything. So here I have my cup. So you could use a cup, you could use your phone, you could use a pen, anything at all, and simply move it from side to side and follow it with your eyes. Your eyes are part of your nervous system. Interesting fact, isn't it? So your eyes are connected to your nervous system. They're part of the nervous system. So follow it with your eyes, really important. The movement and the following is a bit like EMDR, Karen. Yes. So you recalibrate, super simple. We're redirecting the nervous energy and activating both sides of the brain again. So there's a lot of other ways you can do this. Somebody said going for a walk and talking. Walking and talking is bilateral stimulation because you're using different parts of the body. Here's one of my other favorites because it involves hugging yourself. So place your opposite hands on your shoulders. Oh, I wish I could see you all. It's just me doing this. Place both hands on opposite shoulders and then apply pressure because you're activating the nerves. So apply gentle pressure to your shoulders and then move your hands down slowly towards down your biceps until your elbows. And then repeat. So shoulders, apply the pressure. So it's not a stroke. You want to apply some pressure to activate, physically activate. So there are nerve endings right under the surface of the skin on the upper body. And when you apply pressure there, it creates delta waves in the brain. Delta waves are associated with deep sleep, remember sleep, and it slows down beta waves, so beta waves, which are associated with high frequency activity in the brain. So we're in beta probably nowish, in a low beta because you're listening and you switched on, but if you're in a stress situation, you're in heightened beta. So the brain frequency, the brain waves are going very fast frequency. So it slows them right down. And that's another signal to your parasympathetic nervous system that we're safe. So that's a good one. You can do that anytime, right? Do that anytime. You do the tapping anytime. No, it's less annoying if it's not noisy. Dropping the jaw. So I remember this one from doing a natural birthing course. That I learned about the links between the jaw and our stress response. But basically, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. When we're getting ready to fight, the jaw clenches. So all we need to do to initiate the parasympathetic response, the rest and digest, the calming side of the nervous system, when we're on to go off, all we need to do is bring our awareness to our jaw, and you're probably holding it. All you need to do is relax it. Open your jaw. Works. Tells the nervous system we're safe. You're doing it. Thanks, Louise. Otherwise, I'm just here doing this myself. Thanks, Louise. So yeah, pay attention. Start training yourself to pay attention. Where are your shoulders? Where's your jaw? Just relax. Because you hold it in your body, don't we? We're not aware. It's below the level of our awareness. So another way to settle the nerves and calm the mind is a tracking exercise. And somebody put this in the chat earlier as well. So all this involves is simply looking around. I mean, you have to be in a certain level of you can't be completely heightened to be able to do this. But when you can, so it's not as immediate as some of the others I've taught you, but when you can, sit and just look around the room, gaze around the room and put your focus on things and name them out loud. So here you go. Picture, chair, fireplace, dog, cushion, flowers. Flowers. When you find something that appeals to you, stay there. And that's all you do. Please, someone tell me you're doing it. It's all you do. So flowers, light, books, interesting books, table, glass, tree behind the window. Stay there. Thanks, Tricia. So when we're doing this, we're turning our attention to the external environment. We're telling ourselves, literally, but we're telling the nervous system as well that it's safe. You know, the nervous system, remember, is a subconscious response. So it's thinking there's a threat. What we need to do is kind of take over and check. I'm safe. This is a safe. I'm safe. You can literally do that. I mean, you can do it in your head if it's in an area that you can't, but to do it out loud, you see, I'm actually subconsciously rocking back and forth as I'm doing that. So I'm adding a bit of self-soothing as well when I do it. That just happens naturally because I'm calming my nervous system down. Here's another one, and I couldn't think of a simple word for this one, so I put a picture. But touching your lips. Touching your lips activates the parasympathetic nervous system because the lips are rich with parasympathetic fibers. So I guess you could extrapolate that out and say that kissing would be good too. But, you know, and this you can do anytime, can't you? Without anyone noticing, just touching your lips, tapping your lips. It's going to bring your nervous system out of that heightened response as well. So breathing is obviously a great tool that we always have with us. We can do without anybody noticing, and it can turn off the stress response. There's so much research around it, and there's a lot of different breathing techniques that you can do. We're not going to go into them all here, but I'm just going to give you one, my favorite, and I have studied lots of different breathing techniques. This is the physiological sigh from Professor Andrew Huberman at Stanford University School of Medicine. So his lab extensively studies the stress response and how breathing patterns, different breathing patterns affect the stress response in the nervous system. So he talks about this physiological sigh being one of the best ways to get your nervous system back into balance quickly. So it's a pattern of breathing in which there's 2 inhales through the nose, followed by an extended exhale through the mouth. So you fill up, and then when you're at the top, you fill up some more. So it's like this. Let's do it together. I wish I could see you. So fill up, and if you know your belly breathing, you're breathing into your belly here, the lower of your lungs. So it's a 2 in. So fill up on the first one and then top up. So it's a. I feel calm already. I just did 2. Works immediately on your nervous system. 3 of those will work immediately. And it works by basically popping open the little sacs, the alveoli in the lungs that are sometimes not popped open because of our breathing tendencies and our age and lots of other stuff. But it pops them open. So it allows more oxygen to come in. And then obviously we're offloading the carbon dioxide in the long, extended sigh. So these are real-time tools that we can deploy anytime, anywhere to recalibrate that nervous system response. And the final one I want to mention very quickly is the use of others. So we are social animals designed to interact, interrelate, connect with others because because we're mammals, we actually attune to one another's nervous systems. So calm people with a regulated nervous system hanging out in that green ventral vagal space are going to help us to feel calm and regulate our nervous system, and vice versa. So, good to observe who you're hanging out with when you have these heightened experiences, when your nervous system switches on. So the people around us are very important. And as facilitators of our smart groups or clinical workers with your clients, this is so important. We need to make sure that our nervous systems are in a good place before we start our meetings, before we meet with our client, because they're going to regulate to you. It's co-regulation. If you're a smart participant, this is super information too, because you're coming to help your peers as well as help yourself. So if you're not checking in on your own nervous system and going into that meeting, you are affecting others in your meeting. So you're doing them a great favor and yourself to check in on your own nervous system before you step into that meeting. So there's such a lot on this co-regulation, and I'm actually going to do the next webinar talking about this co-regulation, attachment styles, attachment theory, and mindfulness. So I hope you will join me then. But for us to close, I would love to hear your takeaways from this. In good old smart fashion, I'm going to ask you, what did you get out of today? What did you find useful, interesting? What was your takeaway? What did you get out of today? I'd love to know. Love these tools in capitals. Karen, you've made my day. It was worth it. Thank you. Excellent point about co-regulation. Yeah, we're going to dive into that more, Tim. I had so much in this webinar and I stripped it right back. Then come to the next webinar on co-regulation. But very basically, we regulate from one another's nervous systems. So, you know, if you're a dad and your child is screaming and raging, you know that it doesn't work to go in there and scream and rage. But if you're calm and you've regulated your nervous system, they regulate to you. Children actually need us, need adults. Well, they need a stable nervous system to fully grow their own stable nervous system. And so think about that, how that plays out in people who've had childhood trauma who haven't had that. So that's why it's a big topic, and we'll talk more about it next time. I hope that was enough for you today. Yes, tools to regulate, tools you can use, great, access very easily on the wall. Looking forward to the next one. Great, Sharon, very useful. Great, Jennifer. Oh, thanks, Dave. Yeah, real help, absolutely. Yes, there's a recording, Trish. We'll send you the recording. The water analogy, yeah, great. Thanks, Tanya, great. Language-friendly explanations of pretty complex topics that I can use with people. Thank you for saying that, Talia, because that was my aim. That really is my aim, because in these webinars, we have all sorts, you know, such a varied crowd, and I want to give you something that's accessible to all and that you can follow on with your participants or clients. Yeah, you're so welcome, Deb. Absolutely, I love this from Peter. Great way to reaffirm the need for trauma sensitivity for self and others. This is it, isn't it? We all know this, but it's good to revisit it. Self-care and insight are important. Yeah, great affirmation enhancement. Yeah, great. We'll send you out the video, Emily, so it's all there. Yeah, the window of tolerance. Great. Thanks, Anne. It's just a useful tool to help frame it really easily for our clients, isn't it? Great. You're so welcome, Claudinia. Mia. Great. Thanks, Louise. We'll send them out to you, Dave. We'll send them to everyone that registered. It will appear in your inbox. Yeah, I agree, Trisha. Do you still send out Smart Recovery Participants Manual Tools and Strategies to help manage addictive behaviour? Then they are on our website. You can buy the manuals off our website. Okay, well, thank you so much. I'm sorry that I haven't got time to do a big Q&A, but you know where we are. So, okay, great. Thanks, Peter. Peter just dropped some in the Q&A, but we've answered them. So here's my email. Feel free to reach out for us, you know, if you have any thoughts or anything at all. We are here for you. But for today, thank you so much for joining us. You are so welcome. Lovely to meet you all. Wish I could see your faces. And we'll see you again soon. Bye, everybody. Bye. You're so welcome. So lovely of you to join us.